Beth Bridges, running for re-election for the at-large position. There's not much I would add to the responses other than the being an open district and being able to choose different programs. I know Mr. Curry referenced the early college high school, which has actually helped increase enrollment at Estacado High School. So making sure that our campuses and each feeder pattern have strengths, different strengths, from agriculture to fine arts to even athletics, making sure that each student can find where they fit in best.
How do you think gentrification and redistricting has affected segregation in LASD, and how would you see to correct this issue?
Dr. Brian Carr, I'm running for member at large. I think the issue is, when my family moved here in '32 and my father and his two brothers and sisters started at Dupree and then graduated from Lubbock High, it's a different world that we're in now. And so even though we've done redistricting, I think the idea is we want to be proactive and not reactive, because they're going to start grading our schools again in the fall. And if we don't get about 6 or 7 of these schools in a better position, the state can come in and take over these schools or close these schools. So when we talk about redistricting and segregation, I think these are important topics that we need to continue to assess and look at, because it's a changing demographic compared to what it was when I graduated, no offense to anybody, Monterey High School in '75. I'm a Plainsman, but we had family from everywhere. So but the whole idea is that we want to get these changes and stay on top of these changes, and that's where I think sometimes boards, they wait for things to come to them. And I promise that if you elect me, I will not wait for things to come to the board. I will go out and find out what's happening in our community.
Thank you. As we know, Texas is facing a statewide teacher shortage, as with every other district. LASD is also facing the challenge of teacher retention. What ideas do you have in order to keep our staff in our district rather than them going to another district that may be actively recruiting other than money?
So certainly, over the past 4 years and recently, I have listened to teachers too and talked to many teachers. We've done many surveys. We have talked to the Lubbock Educators Association, who is teacher voice. So I have a pretty good idea of what our teachers are needing, and most definitely, it's resources, it's money, it's compensation, it's paying for their time when they're tutoring, after school, Saturdays, and we have built those programs in this year and last year so that we pay our teachers and compensate them. The other thing that teachers are needing is time. Time during the day, time during the week to plan. They are busy all day. PLC time with other teachers, time to collaborate with other teachers so that they can learn from each other and help their students. So as far as what I would do is continue to listen, of course, and be involved in what our teachers need and conveying that back to our administration so that we implement those needs.
Getting ahead of ourselves. So we're gonna pose the question again and we'll go. I appreciate you.
Slow down, Victor. What do you know about critical race theory, and what is your opinion about it?
Very good.
Before I became a psychologist, I was a medical first responder in this city. And when you roll up on an accident scene, you have to decide what's the priority, what do we need to deal with. I think issues like critical race theory, banning books, they're more like dog whistles. They have a relevance. We need to talk about it. But in the meanwhile, we have children in this city who are hungry. We have kids that aren't safe. And I think we got to look at those issues, and then we can get to the curriculum issues. But I think that's an important idea, is that we want to sit there and have a conversation back and forth. But let's not ignore the bigger issues that are in this city, the things that divide us, the things that can unite us. And I believe that's one way to handle it, because CRT it's not being taught. And so we can make issues of it, but I'm not concerned about it. I want to keep up with what's going on. Let's talk about the real issues, not let our children suffer.
A little bit about you.
I am a Pampa harvester, so my husband is from Pampa as well. Got here as fast as we could. We have one son. He is a senior at Lubbock High School. He graduated in 4 weeks, hard to believe. I am the property manager of South Plains Mall, so I have a pretty hefty day job, and my husband works in insurance. So.
point that, you know, I'm following the footsteps of my family. My father was a pediatrician here from 52 to 92, had his clinic on 26th and Avenue Q, and if you were alive at that point, you probably were down there once or twice to see him or Dr. Ellis or Dr. Donaldson. So following that tradition, I've been very active over the years since I came back to Lubbock. I'm 32 years working as a psychologist. I have a clinical appointment to internal medicine at the med school. I've worked with South Plains Kidney Foundation for about 30 years and have managed six-figure budgets for patient services to help people in dialysis and renal failure. And then most recently I was a chairman of the Board of Health for 2 years and on the board 6 years. And the reason we have a health department today is because when the mayor announced that he was going to close the health department and it was a done deal and that I'd have to wow him, we wowed him. I got 6,000 signatures on a petition from the County Medical Society and made the mayor and the city council vote 7-0 to keep the health department open. So if you want to know action, I'm action.
Hello, Annie Thomas. As a board member, though it is understandable to protect your teachers, principals, and staff, what will you do to hold all schools accountable for treating students, regardless of skin color or economic status, fairly when staff and the board may fail to do so?
75% of Lubbock ISD students are economically disadvantaged. That is a fact that is across the entire district. So protecting our students, whatever their race or background is absolutely critical because every child counts every day. That's not just a motto or phrase, we mean that. So we absolutely make sure that our campus staff has the tools to help counsel, to help provide social emotional learning platforms and therapies to our students. Somebody mentioned bullying earlier. We absolutely, it's a problem, always has been, but we have to recognize that those are problems and make sure that our kids are in a safe environment. So the board and staff are absolutely committed to making sure that we have the programs in place that our students can learn in the best environment possible.
As a Board of Trustee member, though it is understandable to protect your teachers, principals, and staff, what will you do to hold all schools accountable for treating students, regardless of skin color or economic disadvantage, fairly when staff and the board may fail to do so?
I failed to mention also that even though I've still got hair on my head, I have 5 daughters, 1 son, and 17 grandkids. That's a lot of people when holidays come around. The answer here, though, I think, again, is, you know, over 30 years as a psychologist, I've done thousands of learning disability assessments. I've done many, many behavioral assessments of children and families and the situation. So I think I've got a good handle on what is the disruption that we face because I've worked with those clients, whether they be people in elementary school or high school. I've worked with the parents. I have a lot of teachers in my practice that talk to me about the stresses and strains. So I think I have a good understanding of what happens. And then from that, we want to work on the flow down of information as well as a flow up of information because I need you guys to tell us where we need help. I want the teachers and the parents to tell us where do we need the help, not just me coming here and saying, I've read some books or I've taken some classes. I want to hear from you. So that's going to be a real basis for me as an outreach.
Again, everyone, I'm Zachary Andrews. This is probably my favorite question because it's very straightforward. So the election is May 7th, as we all know. Each one of you are running against some extraordinary candidates. So what makes you different from your candidates, from the other candidates? What makes you a better board member than the candidates that you are going against right now?
I think what makes me different is I'm very specific about things. You want to know what my plans are? Ask me. I'll tell you. I've shown community activism from my work on the board, the health board, and saving in the health department. I've got good experience. And I think one thing in particular that sets me out is even though politics can sometimes be described as a dirty business, I understand politics from having to deal with the mayor and the city government, going down to Austin and dealing with lobbyists and raising money, because that's how change happens. And we'd like to think that a good argument wins the day, but let me tell you what wins the day. It's going down and talking to people and letting them know we're watching you, and we're going to make sure that you do what we ask you to do and not just blow us off. And so that's the change, I think, for me, is I'm very externally driven. We've got good people to deal with the internal issues. I certainly have an interest in that. But I think we've got to get more active down in Austin to get some of the resources up here in Lubbock.
What I bring to this position is a well-rounded background, not only the last 4 years of experience, but being a part of a school district and running a school district is a big job. We've all heard different issues today. We've heard from schools that may not be doing so well. We've heard about bullying. We've heard about students who in the classroom who need support. We've heard about budget issues, teacher issues. It is not just one thing, it's a lot of little things. And the experience that we have, that I have, the last 4 years, helps bring us forward into the future. Coming out of COVID, yes, there was trauma, there was learning loss, there was learning lag. And we have to have a strong, steady, and forward-looking, forward-thinking board in order to get us through the next 4 years to do what's best for our students and our kids. Because the function of a school district is to educate our kids. And so that's what we have to do going forward with the experience candidates. Thank you.
Okay, gosh, so hard to pick. I just want to thank all of you guys because y'all just been so transparent, so real. I mean, that as a parent is what we want to hear. I think it has not been mentioned here. It's probably been mentioned in other forums. We know that Lubbock ISD is struggling. We all know that. So I just want to know as a parent, what goals are going to be set in place, what policies are going to be implemented, and how us as parents are we going to know that it was successful?
Yes. Goals and how to communicate that and involve our constituency, our parents. So we have set some very specific goals, and forgive me, I do talk in strategic plans and business plans and data and numbers because that is how I function as a business person. So we have set some specific goals to improve student outcomes. Again, that's what we're here for. That's what the function of the school district is. So we have set the goal, our North Star goal, by the year 2026, at least 80% of our students will be in A and B campus. Quality seats. That doesn't mean if those seats aren't A or B, or those campuses are A and B, that those schools are in trouble. We focus on those. We can shift our resources to those kids. So it is a very integrated foundation that we need to support to get our students where they are. What we need to do is make sure that our parents do know what those goals are and how they can be involved on each campus, in each process across the district.
A lot of this is about definition. And part of the trouble with outcome measures is that, for example, I've done a lot of work over the years with Texas Tech Athletics, and I see a lot of incoming athletes who can't read, they can't spell, and they graduated. So we can have great outcomes that are meaningless. So the challenge is always going to be, so we want to use standardized testing because we have to have some accountability. We've got to have some idea of where we rank and where we're at. But the trouble is going to be, how do we define that? And it's a moving target. So some of what we're fixing to come under in these next 2 years as we come out of COVID is looking at these poor performing schools and saying, how do we get there? And I think that second part is, again, outcome measures. And that the way that we know it's working is if you come to me and say your kid's doing better, then I know we're doing something right. But I'm not going to just rely on this sterile, out of Austin, standardized testing. Because I'll tell you, when I graduated Monterey High School, my high school guidance counselor, who didn't ever give me much guidance, suggested in my post-high school plans I should get a job. You know, he said I wasn't college material, but I was.
Academics are a huge part of our district. That was the purpose of school being made in the first place. So what about students not wanting to learn? What can we do to encourage these students that need help with their classes to actually do their work?
I think it goes back to relationships. That, you know, I did well at Tech. I went to St. Mary's and got my master's in San Antonio and went to Indiana State for my doctorate in the School of Education. And I think the difference, particularly in teaching, was at Tech, probably my smallest class was about 30. At St. Mary's University in San Antonio, my biggest class was 6. Okay, that made a difference because of the relationship. I think if we go in there and we just have a handy-handed disciplinary policy that says, you know, you break the rule, you're out, that's kind of draconian. I think we have to work on the relationship with these kids. We've got to give them examples of role models and mentors so they can look at and say, that's what I want to be when I grow up. And lacking that, I mean, you just can't come in and throw a bunch of people out and preach a sermon and drive out of town. You've got to have an ongoing, day in, day out relationship with these kids. And you can get a lot of coverage on that. And so I would propose, as we've talked about mental health services, get our counselors more involved. We've got to have a relationship.
So certainly the demographic and population trends in Lubbock ISD are shifting. The growth in our city is to the southwest and northwest and west. So we are landlocked and surrounded by other school districts that are high growth districts, high tax districts as well, but also high growth and high funding really. So what we have to do is to continue to provide quality programming. And we do have quality programming at each campus. And we have second to none schools, the Talkington School for Young Women Leaders. We have the Estacado Relief College High School, Oak High School in the IB program, Coronado in the IB certification program, and you go on and on. But having those high caliber programs is key. But also our career technical and education at the Byron Martin Technology Center is outstanding. 126 programs that kids can get certification in when they graduate.
So you won the vote. What now? What will be your first course of action once you get into office, and what are your next steps?
I think despite the fact that I've got 30 years plus experience working in this city and on community boards, etc., that first thing is to get in there and better integrate with the school system and understand more about what's going on, because I can go face to face. Right now we're kind of a distance. I mean, I can't get in there. I met with Dr. Rollo one time. Well, I want to meet with her again. I want to understand kind of where they're coming from. And then the next thing is I've got to get out there and canvass you as the stakeholders. And so only when I get that kind of information and then combine that with what we see happening across the state and across the country, then we'll be able to take better steps. So my learning curve, although I think I'm ready, set to go at day one, I'm going to have a learning curve and learn more from it, from the other trustees, from the superintendent, and then we can chart a course that makes sense, that's reasonable, and we can get there.
Thank you. The first thing that I will do is work on teacher salary increases. So that is job one. So rolling our sleeves up and seeing how we can get that into our budget and make it a meaningful increase. So addressing our teachers. Number two, I would like to formulate a plan for community involvement, whether that's parental involvement, citizen involvement, teacher involvement. I'm not exactly sure how that's going to be organized, but I do think what we've heard during this campaign over the last several years is that parents want to know, we need more parent involvement, and we want to hear from you. So I would like to look at the ways that we can get a robust program in place that we can have that feedback.
Hi, I'm Dr. Brian Carr, I'm a member at large, and you want to know why I'm here? Because of family. Not just me, but the family before. So that I brought here today, when my father graduated medical school in 1950, he had this little briefcase, and he carried it all around with him because he took care of the kids here. I will take care of the kids here too.